Patti Schutte, could you take us
Hello.
through? Hello, could you take us through your journey and how you've ascended to where you are today?
Yeah, my journey is rather unique, Graham. If you would have said to my younger self, going to college to get a mathematics degree of all things, that I would end up one day being a presentation strategist for businesses and solo entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes, I wouldn't have believed you, but that's where I am. And life is a unique journey. And I summarize it as I was curious. And when something presented itself in my lap, I'm like, I think I can figure this out. And I'll say yes. But my journey really went from always being in front of some sort of audience and doing some sort of presenting, teaching, training, rather that was in a classroom, a big stage, direct marketing, in corporate America as a presenter manager was actually a title I had, all the way up to VP of professional learning and then running my own organization. But really in a nutshell, if you need to stand in front of an audience and get a result, that's what I've done somewhere along that presentation spectrum. But my business itself, Graham, I'll just kind of jump to there. People say, well, why'd you decide to start your business? And I kind of giggle and I go, I didn't. One day in 2011, and on the other end was a colleague, and she had worked with me and seen what I had done with presenter editions and up-leveling all the communication and presentation skills of that whole organization, not just our trading force. And she's like, I got a new job. I'm an event manager at this conference, and I have these amazing electrical and mechanical engineers. They're absolutely brilliant. They love our product. They love our software. They come to our user conference and they stand on the stage and their brilliance just doesn't shine, and I need your help. And she really literally wrote my business plan product for me. And then I did that for many years. And then just in 2021, I'm like, you know what, it's probably time to just do this rather than doing both. But I have been doing this work for many, many years and absolutely adore it and love it.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Patti. We've never had somebody with this type of experience on, like this expertise. So excited to learn more. Would love to hear an example where you have taken a leader from where they came in for your help and to where they've come out on the other side and achieved great things or had quite a transformation or whatever kind of story comes to mind. Would love to hear more on what that looks like.
Yeah, because the transformation, a lot of people say, oh, you're a speech coach. And I'm like, well, that's a small component of the work that I do. You will gain those skills of how to deliver dynamically, how to eliminate some of those filler words. But that's a subset of the bigger picture. The bigger picture is I work with a lot of subject matter experts, a lot of brilliant startup CEOs. And I'll actually steal a quote I heard from them is so many thoughts are going through their head that they feel like a blender with no lid on top sometimes. And I'm like, I totally understand that. I mean, I myself am a mathematician and have that mindset. And what needs to happen first is clarity and strategy. And so that's where I start with my clients. So to give an example, there was an amazing mathematician who came up with this software. I worked with them a handful of years ago, and they came up with a software that they could put on 3D printers that would take a print job from days to minutes.
Wow.
And it was absolutely amazing. And I got a phone call because one of the marketing people had worked with me at a conference and knew what I did and had seen the transformation that I made in some of those speakers just in a short time from where they presented last year to when they worked with me the following year. And she had me come in. So we did a 2-day workshop. And at the end of it, I said, clarity, 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 clarity. What are you going after in this one moment? And you can only go after that one thing. What are you trying to influence? What kind of result are you trying to attain? And we went through the clarity phase, and then we talked about their delivery skills. And what was really fascinating was that in 2 days, he had slowed down how he was talking. He realized he needed to chunk his content and to go through the first chunk and then move to the second and not let yourself get off the rails. And when he was practicing this presentation the second day, she leaned over to me and she's like, that is the best he's ever looked. And then he paused, which is kind of funny. He goes, I'm so uncomfortable right now. And we're like, we get it because it's new. but you look great, you sound great, and we're going to show you the videos before and after. And of course, then he saw it, even though he was feeling uncomfortable in that moment. But that was a transformation that happened just within a 2-day workshop when I was on site working with them. But that clarity piece and that strategy piece has to come first before we jump into the delivery skills. So that's where Graham, I really push, no, not speaker, not public speaking. No. We're in business strategy first, and then those skills come second.
Makes sense. So does this look the same with every client, or is it very much specific to how you work with your client and how you're engaging, what you're helping them with? Like, is it, what A through Z, the process, or is it, okay, they need help with this, so we go there? Like, how does that look?
Yeah. And when I like I told you, I didn't start this business. I just knew how to do it well. And what I knew how to do well was to look at somebody and quickly identify, just like with the example I gave you, what's their next best 10% and how can we get that win immediately? And then we can go to the next best 10% and so on and so forth. But what I was realizing as I was working with people, it was taking me too long to get out of them clarity. And so through a process of trial and error, I came up with my clarity blueprint. So to answer your question, everybody does that clarity blueprint. Now, how in depth we go, how quickly we go through it, that will depend on their scenario. Am I getting ready to do a big keynote? Well, that will look different than am I getting ready to do a town hall meeting where we just had a really rough quarter. But that clarity phase and that blueprint stays the same. The questions might just change and adapt slightly based on the exact scenario.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think of public speaking and presentations and linking that back to business strategy, I love what you said about clarity, and just there's so much power in just knowing what the overall mission or vision is. And then everything comes from that, right? It's where it's otherwise you're just all over the place, right? That lack of focus really hurts. But when it comes to the tactics of being able to speak to an audience, some people are going to think, well, that just means I need to stop saying, or I need to slow down. I know, especially earlier in my career, I was terrible at like talking way too fast, right? You get nervous, you just keep talking, right? Or just keep rambling, right? Some people ramble in front of an audience. So you talked about the blender with no lid, which I think that's a great way to put it. How do you help with those things? Mm-hmm. And also help with that big picture, like this is what we're here to do overall. That the big idea, but then also those little tactics that really matter, with that impact you make with an audience.
Yeah. And I think I'll answer that in two ways. So Graham, if you're a large organization, so you have multiple employees, and you may even have the luxury of a corporate communication person or a corporate content person. And obviously you have a marketing team and things like that. But there is this communication, there is this direction, brand, whatever you want to call it, that the organization all needs to be marching to the same beat on. And so when that clarity happens, then I come in and I help people say, well, we got to bring this to life. You got to deliver this in a powerful way. And so that clarity piece has a lot of stakeholders, but then it's the individuals and their unique presentation skills, because I don't want clones. I don't want everybody in that organization to be the exact same type of person. You all have unique authenticity, and we got to bring that to life. So when I sit down and work with those people, it's like, look, we know we need to say this, but where do we start? And what a lot of people probably haven't broken apart is to understand that building your delivery skills, not the writing skills, not the clarity skills, but now I have all that done. I have my slide deck. It's all created, whatever. I've been given, sometimes I'm even given what I have to say. But it all starts with the foundational of words. So yes, it's great that we talk slower. Yes, it's great that we use pauses. But first and foremost, people need to be articulate and concise with their words. So when I say the next best 10%, wherever I start with anybody when I'm working with them is, how clear are your words? Are we using what we're supposed to be using if we're in a corporate organization? But are we using words strung together in a way that's authentic for me? Because Graham, we could work at the same organization. We could say the same thing, but if I say ABC, you need to see ZXY, they mean the same thing, but it's just more authentic when you say it one way versus me. So we start with getting really clear on those words, and then very quickly we move to what you were just talking about, that next layer up. If you think of it like a triangle, that next foundational layer up is our voice variance. It's our speed. It's our strategic pausing, but we got to start with words first and then go to that next layer.
Got it.
And then if they're really powerful, we can get to gestures next, where that all comes together and it's all congruent.
Well, so gestures, I feel like I talk with my hands a lot. And some people are either so nervous or just by nature, I guess, they are much more robotic or reserved, where they're just either holding their hands close or, gripping tightly on the sides, right? Or whatever. Some people put their hands in their pockets, which obviously is a big no-no, right? So like, what kinds of things do you talk with clients on that? Like, how do you kind of go there? Like, because it seems so natural just to do it. It's weird to do it while you're thinking of it, by the way. But it seems so natural to do it, but it seems very hard to like teach someone to learn that and actually kind of do it naturally on their own through learning.
Yeah. So we actually start, if they're a hands in the pocket person, I don't let them wear pants with pockets.
There you go.
It's gone. Like we either tape them up. Like I've worked with conferences, big conferences with big speakers. One of my keynotes, I was walking off the stage. Malcolm Gladwell was walking down the stairs and my keynote was walking up the stairs with me. And he's like, why am I following him and not going ahead of him? I'm like, we've got this. It's all good. But I've worked with, that kind of stages and all in between. But regardless, no hands in pockets and no phone, no wallet, whatever the case may be. But we got it, just like I was layering with our words. When it comes to gestures, we need to learn neutral. So many people just can't let their hands just naturally hang at their sides, and they don't stay there like you're frozen. But it is okay to just have a neutral stance, just standing casually, knees a little bit, hands are a little loose. You're just moving them slightly right at your thigh level. And then you come up to gesture so they match what's coming out of your mouth. And that does take practice and time and energy. And so that's why sometimes I tell people, we don't go there. You're not ready. And that's okay. Your gestures could just be your hands are slightly just kind of moving a little bit, not big, talking with hands, like I got to duct tape them together or anything.
Yeah.
But just right in front of you, just casually, so they're not distracting from what you're saying and your voice variance. We'll get to gestures eventually when you're ready. But if they're just people who love to talk with their hands, we really need to work on just bringing them down and bringing them smaller until you're ready for those movements to match the verbs that are coming out of your mouth.
So what's the impact that you see with leaders when you go through this process with them? They may have a single presentation or a series. They may give that workshop, corporate speech, whatever. But what's that impact you see afterwards?
Yeah. And that's why I actually a few years ago, I'm like, I need a name for this mindset and this workflow that I'm putting them through. And when they put them through, they get amazing results. So I came up with the word resultation instead of presentation. It's a resultation because it does exactly what you're talking about. Is in that clarity phase at the very beginning, we're like, what are we going after and how are we going to measure that we know we got it? And so one of the greatest impacts when I'm working with people and they get to the delivery phase, we're going into that workshop, we're going into that presentation, is one, their confidence is out of the roof because they're like, I know exactly what I'm doing. If something goes awry, I know how to adjust. I just feel so much more prepared and confident, but they've never prepared in the way I've put them through. So a lot of them are like, they just didn't know what they didn't know. And now they look at things differently. But the greatest thing at the end is we sit down and we do a debrief session and we go, all right, we were tracking these metrics. We track so many metrics in business and we make so many data-driven decisions. But in these presentation moments in our organization, it just kind of makes me laugh tongue in cheek because I'll say, how'd that go? Like you had a big communication plan you had to roll out. how'd it go? Well, I think it went okay. I'm like, what do you mean you think it went okay? What data, what measurements were you looking at? And so we actually look at that strategically. And so it's not only how did I feel in the moment, because that is good. What, were people leaning in? If it was virtual, were they chatting? What were we hearing afterwards? But also, what are some of those key metrics that we want to be measuring that we can go back to say, this is penetrating, this is making a difference. And so that's the greatest thing. In that last stage, I call it the capture phase, because you're not only capturing your confidence and your ability to go do well and protect outcomes in this moment, but we're also capturing results and data.
So key moments and not missing the opportunity to boost momentum across an organization.
Yes.
Like, how do you talk with a leader about that to get them to understand what you mean by that?
Yeah. So what's interesting is clarity in communication and consistent from any level of the organization. When that happens, people can move quickly. Like, that is a big momentum mover, because they know, all right, this is my boundaries. This is where I'm going. We're all saying the same thing. We're marching to the same vision or corporate strategy for this 2026. And so when what I'd love to do, if they have them, we pull some old recordings and I said, now listen to this, close your eyes, listen to this. Now write down, what were the top thing you said that everybody needs to be focused on for the next 30 days or 60 days? Just the one thing. What was the top thing? And he's like, or she. And sometimes they can't. I said, yeah, there was not that message, that through line, that remember statement. So what is that needs to happen at key moments throughout your business? So at town halls, what's being repeated? When you're going to your strategic partnerships, what's being repeated? What is that opportunity you have in all these presentation moments to push the gas on that communication strategy, on this presentation strategy, so that momentum continues in terms of vision, that momentum continues in terms of clarity, because then that way teams are like, I know what's going on. I've heard it. I can move. I'm not all of a sudden being side railed because somebody's telling me something different. And I think, and I don't think, I've seen it over and over again, but a lot of times in organizations, when we can get the key people that are the bigger communicators around the table first being strategic and going through this process and their presentation moments, that trickles down to the other people in the organization. And then they start doing their sales calls with more strategy, even unbeknownst to them. They might not even been through my training, but because they've heard others, then that can happen. And that can happen even in there's an ops team I'm working with right now. They're the team that's up for the town hall, the all hands for this organization. They're freaking out. They're like, we have never spoke to the whole company and we have to shine on what we do at ops. I'm like, guys, the company would fall apart if you didn't do what you did. Let's just talk about how you're the quiet engine that keeps everybody happy and moving, and come up with something that was connected strategically to what the initiatives are for the company right now, but showcases them in a way that brings everybody to be like, wow, that ops team really rocks. But then that's another opportunity for momentum, because that team felt more confidence and then they were showcased in front of the company. So it can happen internally, building that momentum when there's clarity and great presentation moments, as well as externally when you're talking to customers and clients.
Great communication is infectious. And a lot of times it's just natural, right? People aren't thinking about all that, right? But when there is clarity and there's the right type of repetition, the right forum for it, you're right. Like, people just naturally pick up on, oh, well, this is how we do things, or this is how we talk about things, or whatever the case may be. I love what you said about operations, by the way, the quiet engine. I like that. It's great. You're talking my language now as well. So one area that came to mind, Patti, when you were talking about all this is, we get so, as leaders, we can get so bad at just giving the laundry list, like almost like the organization's to-do list of A to Z. This is everything we got to get done this year. And people's heads are spinning. Otherwise they're asleep. And like you don't even know what that one thing is coming out of that. So I would love to hear a little bit more on how do you get a speaker or, somebody hosting a presentation or whatever to really nail down that one thing and make sure that it's not obnoxious, but it is naturally repetitious, or however you frame it up.
Yeah. So we sit down, and in the blueprint process, they say you have to know your audience, and it seems like, oh yeah, I know my audience, but so many times we know the audience to what you were just saying a moment ago. We know their laundry list of what's what they do, where they are. We don't know, but what type of person are they in terms of how they may learn or how may they absorb information, so then they can take it and go do whatever it is that you would like them to do with it.
Yeah.
Let's dive down into that, because if I'm going to talk to the ops team, that's going to be different than if I'm going to talk to the sales team. Or if I'm doing a town hall, then I need to make sure that, okay, we have a lot of different personalities. How am I saying things in different ways and in different delivery styles so it hits my people who may be auditory learners, visual learners, whatever the case may be? So one of the key things is we start by looking at the audience, but we look at them on how they absorb information and what type of learning style may they need to most likely increase their probability of doing what we want them to do with whatever that call to action is. So we start with that, and then we go right to the end. And I say, okay, close your eyes. Whether this is virtual, whether this is in person, whatever. This audience that you're in front of, you want them to do something. What is that? What is that they're going to do right away that you're going to know that you did something successfully? And if they forget everything else that you say, but they see you a month later, what are they going to say back to you that you said in this presentation? That becomes their foundational phrase or their remember statement. And then the last piece I always say is, how do you want them feeling? Because if they know what they want them to do, and they know what they want them to most remember, and they know how they want them feeling, just getting that out of leaders, what I found over and over and over again is they automatically know this is a must-have, this is not. This is what I need to have in order to move this needle. And then once we have that, then we write the ending. Kind of like a lot of best-selling authors will write the last paragraph of their book. It's similar, is say, okay, let's write the ending. Now, what are the 2, 3? Most of the time it's no more than 3. Sometimes if it's a keynote, it's 5, but that are going to drive this audience based on these different types of people we have in the room to do this. And what's really fascinating is then the beginning just writes itself. Like people and that is the biggest thing. If I could have anybody remember one thing, if they're listening to this, Graham, here's the one thing I want them to remember. Stop starting at the beginning. Don't open a deck and go, oh, I got these. I call it the pick, peck, repeat method. They pick this file, they pick this file, they peck at the slides that are in those files, they put them to merge together to make a new file, but they didn't take the time to go, put all that away, what do I want to happen at the end, write your ending, and then go from there.
That's great. Great advice. So what comes to mind from my experience with this is a couple different things. One is, you got to tell them what you're going to tell them. You got to tell them and then tell them what you told them. And then the other one is you got to make sure up front. And this one is probably a little bit clearer to your way of looking at it, is you've got to be clear on what you want them to know, how you want them to feel, what do you want them to do. And I think I'm missing one or two of them, but those types of things, that's what comes to mind from some of my experience with preparing for these things. So.
Yeah, that second one definitely goes a little bit better. But with the tell them what you were going to do, the only difference with tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them, it's just that you don't do it, that they can see it.
You're right. Yes.
That's the miss that so many people have made, because that's a real old formula.
Yeah.
And it was really popular, especially in the education and training and corporate training world, is it was too blatant. And it was just, then what happened is we became talker adders.
Yeah.
And we just performed. Rather than connection. And how do they learn? And how do I need to adapt? And how do I need to twist and change in the moment? So yes, but definitely I resonate more with what do you want them to know? How do you want them feeling? That formula.
I love the starting with the audience and starting with the end in mind. Those are really key, I feel like. That's great. So what's the most fulfilling aspect of your work?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I really, two things, I think. Love people that I get an opportunity to work with that are newer in their career. And because they struggle sometimes to be like, I don't have a voice in this room. I don't have the expertise. I'm the youngest in the room. I don't know what I don't know yet. And to sit down with them and say, yeah, you do. And how can we showcase that? How can we build your executive presence is the word they like to use a lot of times with me. How can we build that so you are taking up the space in the room that you want to be taking up and that you feel that your voice is heard? So that is really fulfilling. The other part that is fulfilling is just the people that come to me and go, I knew I didn't like this, and maybe it was a quirk they had, or maybe it was when they saw somebody else do it. But I didn't know why I didn't like it, and I didn't know how to fix it. I just knew that I didn't like it. And so I had one client come to me one time, and he reached out to me. We had worked together briefly at a conference, and then he went to a conference. He's like, Patti, they were showing so many slides, and there were so many words for slides. I didn't like it, but then I realized the light bulb went off. I was doing it too, but I don't know how to fix it. Help me fix it. So when they walk away they're empowered. They know what they want to fix. They know why they want to fix it, and they know how they want to fix it. And that just fills my heart with joy.
That's great. What's one thing that you've seen with leaders that have either struggled or failed?
I think from a struggle perspective there's a disconnect between, I can just walk in, I'm fine. I've done this 100 times. I got this. And when I hear that, or anybody that works with a lot of speakers or works in this space with me, rather they do it in conferences, rather they do it in corporate communication, they know that when they hear the words, I do this all the time, we cringe. And so if that's coming out of your mouth, the reason we cringe is because we fear that you've become robotic and you're not able to self-reflect enough to go, did I really do what I needed to do in this moment or not? And to be honest, when I'm a speaker coach for conferences that have hundreds and hundreds of speakers and I'm working with the event manager, they'll give me a list of what they call the problem speakers. And unfortunately, they get on that list because that came out of their mouth. And so one of the big things is to not let yourself get to the point where you're like, I've done this so much, I'm a robot. Every moment, pause. Now, you don't have to do the whole blueprint as lengthy as you may, but even if you just pause to go, okay, whoa, what moment am I going into? Who is this audience? What do I want the do remember feel to be? Take a moment, get clear, forget everything that you did before. This unique moment is different. And so that is one big miss I see. The other miss that I see regularly is they try to do, and I've already alluded to it, but they try to do too many things at one time. You know, they try to talk about the corporate strategies. They try to talk about this new software we're coming in. They try to talk about, and it's just all over the map. And then they come back to something in a way that didn't make sense. And so achieving too much in one moment, or having kind of, I've got this, I can do this, I've done it 1,000 times. Those are the two that I see are the most problems.
Makes sense. So that overconfidence and lack of self-awareness in maybe what they think is either coming out of their mouth or how they're projecting, and the gap between that and then the actual real impact that people are actually going to feel or have felt. It sounds like it's really important to kind of be open to really hearing from those helping you with this.
Yeah. And at the end of it too, is what's great is when we go through my process in that last phase, when I say data, like that's the other big key piece too, is when I look at people, I say, so what's the data that you know you were successful in that moment? And oftentimes there's no concrete data. It's more of, well, they asked me back. I'm like, okay, well, that's one data point, but do we have other data points? Because, maybe they just didn't have anybody else to ask. I'm not saying that's the case, but so that's a key thing too, is getting into that. When I say this resultation mindset, which can create great momentum in your organization, is that I'm always going, how do I clarify? How do I clarify? How do I clarify? And there is a create phase. Like, do I need slides? What do I need that's visual or to support me? But then in that capture phase, it's what we've been talking about now, is how do I go deliver and how do I sound really articulate and communicate well? But then how do I really know that I'm doing something because I'm strategically tracking results?
What's next for you, Patti?
What's next for me? I'm starting to get more contracts. I've always done speaker coaching and I love speaker coaching. But from those speaker coaching, I've now gotten in, partnered with organizations where I am helping with partnering with their marketing team, partnering with their corporate content team, because they're like, Patti, here's what we need them to say. And here's how we need to bring it to life. But we need them to do those presentations, those delivery skills. So I'm working with different teams and how they present either internally or externally and helping them grow their presentation delivery skills as well as their presentation clarity skills. So that has been a huge joy to work with organizations, small all the way up to almost billion. My biggest one right now isn't quite there, but they're close, and working with those different teams to really make presentation a strategy to build momentum in their organization.
Anything that we've missed that we should touch on before we wrap up?
I have people that will say, oh, I need to get better at speaking. And I will want them to say, great, but when you go look for somebody, make sure that somebody understands the business world of presenting, because there's a presentation spectrum. We've got comedians and keynotes and MCs on one side where all the spotlight's on them, and there's really not a big cognitive or thinking load on the audience. The audience is like, oh, that was entertaining. Then you go all the way to the other side, and you've got facilitating, you've got training, you've got teaching, and there's a huge cognitive load on the audience because they need to change their skill set. But then we have this business world in the middle. And that business world in the middle is where we're going after some sort of result, and it's a back and forth and that human connection piece, and it's kind of messy. And how can we help get clarity around that? So if you're going to go ask somebody, please make sure that they know the world that you're living in and they're not just expertise on the edges of the spectrum, because there are a lot of times people that are experts at keynotes and things, but when they come into the business world, it doesn't all apply or they don't have that years of experience. So that's one of my big pieces of advice that I'd like to end with if people are looking for this type of skills and this type of support.
Great. Before we wrap, what do you want those you've worked with to say about your impact on them?
Do I want them to say?
Yeah.
Well, gosh, you can go to my website and read what they say. One of my favorite quotes was a gentleman, and he's like, oh, I wish I would have met you 30 years ago when I started my career. And I said, why? He goes, because I look back at all my presentation moments and I know I would be farther in my career than I am right now, because I didn't go in with enough strategic presentation, clarity, communication, all those things that we've talked about. And I had another client in Dubai, and he reached out to me and we worked together for a while, and he messaged me again and he goes, Patti, I have only been at this organization for, I think he's now been there 6 months. I'd have to go back and look at the date he gave me. He's like, I already know I have them beating to a better drum and more momentum than my last place I was at when I first met you, because what you taught me, I've now taken over. And because I've switched from one company to another, I can clearly see the difference. And so thank you for helping me through this resultation mindset and method. And I said, of course. So that's what I hope all my clients say, is using those two examples.
That's great. How can listeners best find you or follow you in your mission?
Yeah, my website is, so it's B, all spelled out, no fancy spelling, but it's B brilliant presentationgroup.com, or you can always Google Patti Schutte, Patti with an I, and you'll find me that way, and learn more about me right there on my website. At the very top, at the very header, at the very top of the website, there's a free micro course you can take advantage of, and there's a Let's Chat button. And when you click that, you don't go to my sales team. You literally get me. That's something that's important to me, is when we sit down and talk about your unique presentation needs that you may have, I want to make sure you're talking to me and make sure we can say what makes the most sense for you. But that's the best thing, is go to my website.
That's great. Patti Schutte, Be Brilliant Presentation Group. Thanks for being on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Graham. Great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Definitely. Take care.